the biggest, most important thing for me to do is to share my success with my people. He said, that's what I cared about, and that's what I have to do. And there's other boxers that have done that. Manny Pacquiao, who fought Floyd Mayweather, took a lot of his money and felt obligated to go back to his old community and build thousands and thousands of houses because he knew that wealth he had was supposed to be shared with the people that made him into who he is. And so the reason I brought up Ngannou in that fascinating story, I mean, he instantly became my favorite fighter on the entire planet. Like, he instantly became one of the athletes that I admire the most in the entire world. Is what I loved about his story was that he shows that there are some cultures where you're supposed to give back. There are people who, a lot of times what happens with the Black liberation struggle, the Black economic liberation struggle, in my opinion, is that the people who tend to fight the hardest for Black people are the ones who were rejected by white people. Even myself included. I was at Syracuse University, and who knows? I don't know what my career trajectory would have been if I hadn't gotten into it with Syracuse and sort of been. I knew I was going to get pushed out eventually, so I was like, okay, well, since I'm going to get pushed out, I'd find something else to do. So even with myself, I have to admit that I don't know. I think that if I had not been pushed out, I think that doing what I do in the Black community would have been something I did in my spare time as opposed to doing that in my main time. And then it was after I did it in my main time, really almost out of necessity, I realized, like, wait a minute, this is what I should have been doing all along. Like, sometimes we think that connecting with our own community is the backup option. Like, that's the fallback. Like, you start a Black-owned business in case white people won't hire you. And what we don't understand is that before integration, because you guys know affirmative action, the Supreme Court just shot down affirmative action today on university campuses. So before you had affirmative action, the student loans and corporate jobs, you had people in your community who really wanted to be around each other, who really wanted to start Black-owned businesses, who really wanted to build institutions within the Black community. So Ngannou became my favorite fighter, not just because I'm a natural. I was an athlete, and I like great athletes. I just think that's awesome. The idea he's the baddest man on the planet is very cool, but also the fact that he understood, or he has made the decision to believe that no matter how much the Europeans love me, I'm a warrior for my people. I'm supposed to take this back to Africa. I'm not supposed to just disappear and go live in La La Land and forget about where I came from. I don't know if African Americans have that same mindset. I just don't. I know that it is like pulling teeth sometimes to convince Black people about the importance of giving back to other Black people and supporting other Black people. Even in the conversations about the horribly embarrassing conversations that I'm seeing on the internet from men who make fun of the men who choose to marry women that have children and raise those children, and give those children the chance to have a father, rather than saying, wow, I admire you, sir, for stepping in and keeping this kid off the street and giving this kid an opportunity and giving them the love they deserve. There are men who say, oh, you're a sucker. You're a fool. Why would you do that? You're just a cleanup man for some other man. You babysitting some other man's kids. And that's like sucker talk. That's like the most embarrassing talk ever, because literally what you're really saying is that my goal in life is just to sit around and just be a lazy bum pleasure seeker. Like, I'm supposed to sit around, drink my liquor, smoke my weed, have sex with my women, and not have any obligation to anybody. And so if you want to understand, again, this is why in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I talk about culture a lot. Think about this. This is why you had in Chicago last week, a Black man punching a Black woman in the head in broad daylight, and none of the Black men are intervening. Every Black man is standing there holding their cell phone and saying, oh, man, did you see the way he hit her? Not one single man felt compelled to step in. So what had to occur? Well, her 14-year-old son had to go get a gun out of the car and take care of this man who's beating his mother half to death, because there's not a single man within a 100-mile radius who's man enough to stand up and deal with this issue. Again, I'm thinking about Victor Ngannou or Francis Ngannou. I bet you that if a man like him was in the room, that guy, the 14-year-old, would never have had to intervene at all. What's supposed to happen in a normal community, in my opinion, is that the grown men are supposed to step in and say, son, you stay back. You get in the car. We're going to take care of this, right? It doesn't have to come down to somebody getting shot, because we're as big as he is. We can tackle him. We don't have to shoot him. But if you're smaller than him, if you're a woman or a child, the only option you have to stop him is to shoot him. That's the only choice you have. But if I'm there and he's 5'9", 160 pounds, and I'm 5'9", 210 pounds, well, I can at least tackle him and get him off of that woman, right? And I can tell you, I guarantee you, that's what what I would have done. I don't care. I don't care what, gang affiliated and all sorts. I would have done something to intervene in that situation, as every man should, right? So anyway, let me keep going. Let me keep reading here about, or let me jump back into the slides. I know that we diverted a little bit, but I really wanted you to understand culture and just, I consistently remind you guys that culture is everything when it comes to wealth. If you don't have the right culture, you won't have strength, you won't have wealth, you won't have anything. And part of the culture shapes your values. It tells you what's important. If I get money, if I become successful, what am I supposed to do with that success? Who am I supposed to share that success with? Where do I take this power that I have? And that Victor Ngannou story, I think, was a good one in terms of illustrating what it looks like when a child is raised with certain values, to say, when you go out into the world and you become successful, you're supposed to bring that success back home. China does that also. China is an emerging economic superpower. They used to be the joke of the world. They used to be the laughing stock of the planet. Now they're an emerging economic superpower, primarily because the Chinese government started telling Chinese people that you have to come back to China. They said there's nothing more important in your life that you'll ever do. There's no community you'll ever contribute that's more important than China. You can go around the world and become the greatest thing that you ever wanted to be, but if you're not bringing that to China, then we don't care what you've done. We don't care how successful you are. It means nothing if it doesn't affect China. So I think the Black community should have that same low tolerance policy to say, we don't care how successful you are. I don't care how many white people put you on TV. I don't care how many record deals you got. I don't care how many Ferraris you're driving. I don't care how many Gucci belts you bought. If we can't tangentially account for, if we don't have some sort of accountable to show the impact that you've made on the Black community, then your success means nothing to us. Go hang out with the Europeans who made you rich. Those are your friends. Even this week, when Diddy, the rapper Diddy, was complaining that he was, he was mistreated by this vodka company that he did a deal with. I think there were a lot of people who said, well, I mean, weren't there any Black-owned companies you could have partnered with other than this British company? Because it's not as if they're treating you as well as we would have treated you. And it's not as if white people are the only ones who know how to make liquor. It's that you lent your $1 billion brand to them because they could provide the capital that you needed in order for you to get what you wanted. We understand that. So you made $1 billion from the deal, and that's good for you. But at the same time, the question becomes how many manufacturing facilities do we see in Harlem as a result of this deal? How many new jobs, how many thousands of new jobs have we seen in the Black community as a result of this deal? Or did we just sort of see one guy go off and take a $1 billion asset out of the Black community, hand it over to white people? You and your white buddies are making money together, and now you're having a problem. Well, it's almost like when OJ went and, decided he didn't want to be with a Black wife anymore. He decided he wanted to hang out with white women, and now you're being mistreated. Well, that's not our problem. That's between you and the people that you chose to spend your time with. The same thing is true. I felt that same way when I did talk to Kanye West, and he was complaining about the Kardashians, and I said I never would have married a Kardashian. Why would you even do that? Why would a Black man even marry a woman who's going to take all his money and take his kids and ruin his life? But you did that. I understand you did that because that's the cool thing to do. That's what society tells you makes sense. But I never would have said that to you. I don't think it made sense at all. These are not good people. These are porn stars who got rich. So anyway, let me keep going. So number 7, capital must be preserved, protected, and efficiently used. That's the 7th commandment. So what does that mean? Well, the thing about capital is that you have to understand when you're talking about money and income and wealth and everything else, what income does is it gives you an opportunity. Income is like a potential. You have a kid who's a great athlete and he has a lot of potential. Potential means nothing if it's not utilized. If you do not utilize your potential, it's as if you never had it. If you have potential and you don't use it, then you might as well not have it at all. You wasted it. So income is the potential to generate wealth. Wealth becomes a form of capital. So what is capital? Well, if you look up definitions, there are various definitions. I'm going to go through them very quickly. Paul Samuelson, a famous economist, he gives a fancy definition. He says, capital is the durable produced goods that are in turn used as productive inputs for further production of goods and services. And so basically saying that these are things that are used to create other things. You have an input and then you get an output, right? So like if you I don't know, if you have a factory where you bring trees and you turn them into paper, that's kind of how he describes capital. And then Adam Smith, another famous economist who's not black, he says capital is that part of a man's stock which he expects to afford him revenue. So that's basically anything that helps you make money. Anything that helps you make money. So if you got a horse, the horse helps you make money. You have a car, you have a stripper. You know, strippers make money. I saw this. I just saw this. My wife showed me this video of two strippers that got robbed after the BET Awards. My wife said something funny. She said strippers carry a lot of cash, and I bet they have a lot of cash after the BET Awards because all the rappers go to the strip clubs. So anyway, so even a stripper has a form of capital, right? His or her performance ability that generates revenue. So you have what is called human capital. That's why you grew up and you went to go work for other people. A lot of us did because human capital is the only kind of capital we had. After slavery, there was no 40 acres, there was no mule. That would have been a type of capital. But instead of having that form of capital, all we had was our bodies. All we had was our time. All we had was our labor, right? So your labor, your body, your time is typically the main type of capital that you have. Now, according to this guy named Dr. Boyce Watkins, capital is a collection of resources that allow you to get what you need in order to survive and prosper. So that's basically just stuff that you have that helps you get what you need. So if you are a farmer and you have a bunch of apple trees, well, then those apple trees are your capital. You're getting apples off these trees that you have in your orchard. And as long as you take care of the trees, and then you're going to have apples. And what you do also is you have to do the same thing we talk about with stocks. A lot of you are in our stock market investing classes and stuff like that in the Black Business School. And you know, I talk all the time about protecting your capital with put options and generating income from your capital. That's what we do in the Prime program. We generate income from selling stock options. Also dealing with the risk level, assessing the risk level of your capital and growing your capital, right? Reinvesting the profits, a percentage of that, so you can grow your capital base. So my friend in Africa, who's very, very wealthy, I went to visit her house and her family in Botswana, and they were living really nice, kind of like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. And they had all this really nice stuff. They had Bentleys, Benzes, Range Rovers. They had butlers, maids. They even had a gardener. They had literally had a full-time person, and all they would do was take care of the garden. And I asked her, I said, and she had this great father who was like this super strong man. And I think that's what caused her trouble because she married an African-American man. So her father was this almost like King Joffrey kind of person, very influential in the community, very well respected, very, very wealthy. And so I said, how did your family get all this wealth? And she said, well, my great grandfather had cows. And then my grandfather had more cows than him. And then my father had more cows than him. And now we have more cows than my father. And she said, one thing I don't understand about African Americans is, she said, I do not understand how African Americans think they can build wealth if they're starting over every generation. She said, if we had to start over every generation, we wouldn't have anything. And the other thing too that she talked about was I watched how her father kind of navigated. She had a tremendous amount of respect for her father. Which caused her challenges with her African-American husband, because her African-American husband he had no father. So he was just not as strong, just not as capable. He didn't, rise to the challenge. So she had trouble kind of seeing, like if you can't make money and you say, well, it's because white people won't give me a job. That didn't make a lot of sense to her. She was like, well, my father didn't have any jobs, and my father would go start businesses and find some way to make something happen. He'd go make an investment. He wasn't just looking for a job. He never looked for a job. And what else did she say that was really interesting to me? I remember just kind of getting the sense that there was kind of a structure. And she talked about marriage a lot. And she said that in my village, when a man got out of line, the other men would confront that man and make sure that man did not get out of line. And she also said that if you are a man in my community and you're not married and you don't have a family, you're not even seen as a man. People look at you and they kind of just say, well, he's immature. He may be 40 years old, but he's not even strong enough to take care of a wife and children. So we don't even look at him as a real man. He's almost still like a little boy to us. So I think that just seeing other cultures and looking around the world and seeing how other people develop that structure could be really beneficial, I think, for Black people, right? So some examples of capital are things like real estate, labor, the family cow. If you have a name brand or reputation, that's capital. Like, so for example, in my estate plan, I put, my one of my assets is my name, the name Dr. Boyce Watkins. You can slap my name on stuff and it adds value, right? So this is something that I'm leaving behind to my family and also to the Black Business School. I'm leaving about 70% of my wealth to the Black Business School, and I'm going to, we're forming a board of trustees that's going to be accountable for sort of taking that wealth and growing it and doing things with it. Cars, your body, your skill. When you go to college, you get more skill. That increases the value of your human capital. So that's another thing. Stocks and bonds, cash, etc. So the key thing to understand when you talk about capital is that capital is that's the goal, right? A lot of us don't ever learn the goal. We think that the goal is income. And so what I want to challenge you to do is stop thinking about wealth in terms of income and start thinking of financial success in terms of capital and the actual wealth that comes from that income. So moving forward, what's the most important job of a quarterback? I'm going to ask that question for anybody in here that wants to answer. If you're a football fan, you might know the answer. You may have heard me ask this question before. So answer me in the chat. What is the most important job of a quarterback in a football game? If you watch a football game, what's the most important job of quarterback? Is it to throw the ball, down the field? Is it to run the ball? Is it to, there we go. Abel and Kendall. Good. I see y'all been paying attention. It's to protect the ball. Right. So one of the things that that a person who is a capital builder or a wealth builder must do before you do anything else is you have to protect the ball. OK, so protecting the ball is in financial terms means basically taking the assets that you have and making sure that they don't go down, right? Making sure they go up instead of down. And banks are really good at this. Banks are very conservative. This is why banks don't even make loans that are even low risk sometimes, because their number one goal is to make sure that they don't lose the capital that they have. You have to protect your capital base, because protecting your capital is really protecting your freedom. If you lose your capital base, then you have to become a slave. And what do I mean by that? Well, think about it. Why did you, when most of you, how many of you, give me a yes in the chat if you, after college or after high school, you had a job. How many of you were working, and how many of you had a job? And especially how many of you also had a job that you didn't really enjoy that much? I had a job at Arby's. I worked at Taco Bell. I worked at Wendy's. I tried to work at McDonald's because they paid a little bit more, but for some reason I couldn't get a job at McDonald's. That was my dream job when I was 16. And so a lot of us had jobs, right? Well, why did you have to get a job? Let me ask you this. If you had, I don't know, let's say you own 3 properties and you also had, $300,000 in your stock portfolio, would you have worked at that job? Would you have taken that job and gone to work every day? Or would you have stayed home and done something more fun? You probably wouldn't have taken the job. If you'd had money in your account, you never would have went to the corporate plantation. You never would have taken that job. So what effectively happened is that because you had no capital base, you had to sell yourself into slavery. That's my point. And it is slavery. And I'm not making that up. It really is slavery. Slavery is when you simply can't do what you want to do. Freedom is when you can do whatever you want to do. Slavery means you can't do what you want to do. There are varying levels of slavery. There's extreme slavery. And then there's kind of like, slavery light. But a lot of us experience that, where for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, you have to be away from your family. You can't, you have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. You have to ask for permission to get days off. You have to get up and go to work, even when you're tired, even when you're stressed, even when you don't want to do it, even when your baby's asking you to stay home. You say, well, I can't because daddy got to go to work. Right. So that is a type of slavery. And so a capital base, and this is why you give your children a capital base. If you love your kids, you're going to try to think about ways to give them a capital base, because a capital base protects your freedom. That is it's like armor and a shield. If your child goes into the world and they have capital, they never have to work for anybody. Donald Trump, for example, as terrible as he can be, some of y'all don't like him. Some of you love him. I don't care either way. The best thing his father gave him was a capital base. If his father had not given him a base of capital, Donald Trump wouldn't be doing any of the things he's doing right now, because he would have spent the first 20 or 30 years of his life working a corporate job, trying his best to get off the corporate plantation. So maybe he would have become an entrepreneur by the age of 40 or 50 or something. But he never would have done what he did in his life, and making billions of dollars, jumbo jet, president of the United States, all that stuff. None of that would have happened. He was able to do these things because he got an early start. He was tossed into the game as a liberated person, right? So he was at 28 years old. He bought a $400 million hotel at 28 years old. Most 28-year-olds don't do that. And he got some help doing that. The planning for this was done 30, 40 years before he was born. It was when his father went and decided instead of fixing people's houses, he would actually buy property. He would buy real estate in New York, and he started buying real estate like a lot of you all are buying real estate right now. And next thing you know, his son is born. His son did the idea of getting a job wasn't even considered, so give your kids a capital base, and then at some point, if you can, give yourself a capital base, and then you must defend the capital base the same way the quarterback defends the ball. Because if you lose the capital base, then you have to become a slave again. You got to go back to work. So moving on, and the defense of that capital base requires strategy. It requires discipline. It requires some level of thought and planning. So not every Black person needs to run a business, but every Black person should own a business, right? Own a piece of a business. What does that mean? Owning a piece of a business is as easy as buying shares of stock. Every other day I buy shares of stock. Every other day I'm investing in new businesses. Okay. Everyone should have some type of capital. Again, that protects your freedom. When you have no capital, you become a slave to capitalism. So don't sell your children into slavery. That's the lesson that I want you all to pick up today. So here's the question. Why most families lose all their wealth within one generation? A lot of people don't know this, but most wealthy families lose all their wealth in one generation. Okay. So the question is, well, how is that? How do wealthy families lose all their money? Some of your kids are gonna blow everything that you guys have unless you make preparations now. A lot of it is because basically the children become thieves of their wealth because the very same values that you have that led you to become a wealth builder are not inherited by your children. Your children don't go through what you went through. They don't have to struggle the way you did. So 90% of all families lose all their wealth within 2 generations. 70% lose all their wealth within 1 generation. This is why, for example, at the All Black National Convention this year, we're actually having some estate planning experts to come in and talk about generational wealth and how to protect that. We also have, in addition to estate planning experts coming to the convention, we also have this family, Dr. Mary Stoddard and Dr. Marcus Stoddard are both coming. Dr. Marcus Stoddard is a world-renowned cardiologist. Dr. Mary Stoddard has a law degree and a PhD. Mary grew up on a farm. This was before integration and affirmative action and civil rights. She grew up on a farm in Louisiana. She was a sharecropper. She had 17 brothers and sisters. And all 17 of her sharecropping brothers and sisters all graduated from college. And it wasn't because of some government program. It wasn't because somebody opened that door for them. It was because they, as a family, understood how important, how valuable the family unit is. They stuck together. They had a code of conduct. They literally executed a lot of the ideas that I talk about in this book. And then the next generation up, she marries Marcus, because she wasn't going to marry no bum. She wasn't going to try to get pregnant by a rapper because that was not her family value system. She marries Marcus, who becomes a cardiologist, and they had 5 kids, and all 5 of their children have PhDs or MDs. And I begged the Stoddards to come to the convention because I said, these are the families that we need to see and we need to hear about. In Black culture, you tend to see a glorification of celebrity couples. People think that because a basketball player and an actress got married to each other, that somehow that's a strong family, or that's some sort of model of Black families. And it's just not, it's in many cases, it's not as sturdy as it may look. I mean, we may look up to Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith because they're famous, but I don't think their kids are necessarily the kinds of kids that we want our kids to be, right? So my thought is, let's look at that. Let's look at the management of that family institution and really say, okay, how can we really make that thing work for us, and be really strategic, thoughtful, and conscious in terms of how we plan that. Because if you plan it the right way, then you won't have this problem. You won't have your kids blowing all your wealth, on stupid stuff. I went to Atlanta one time, and I saw this old man. There was a guy, I was giving a speech, and there was a guy driving me around the city, showing me around. And he's pulled over to talk to this old man who's carrying a bunch of boxes. And this old guy who looked like he was pretty old, like 80 years old, like too old to be working, but he's a hardworking man. And so anyway, they're talking for a minute, and then we drive away. And I said, "Who was that?" And he said, "Oh, he's very wealthy. He's worth about $100 million." And I said, "Really? Wow." He said, "Yeah, he owns a lot of restaurants in the city." And I said, "Oh, that's cool." And I said, I said, so yeah, tell me more about him. He said, well, he's trying to pass all his wealth to his son, but his son doesn't want to run any restaurants. His son wants to be a rapper. And so basically his son is running around trying to be a rapper and neglecting the family business. And this is culture. This is Atlanta culture. He's in Atlanta. He's seeing all these people that, with flashy fake jewelry and fake booties and sports cars and this hip hop culture. And it's pulled him away from his family wealth building investing culture. Same thing happened when I was in Baltimore. I drove past this vacant mall, and I was giving a speech there, and the guys who were driving me around, they said, yeah, this mall used to be filled with Black-owned businesses, but these businesses all got abandoned, a lot of them because their kids didn't want to come back and run these businesses. Their kids wanted to go get corporate jobs, right? So effectively, that means that there's kind of been a breakdown in that process of what legacy and generational planning really looks like and what it really means. It's not the most exciting, sexiest thing in the world, but it has to be done, or you're going to lose everything. And so if your kids can't preserve what you built, then you got to give it to somebody who can. And that's just important. Don't waste your energy. So how do wealthy families lose their wealth? Here are a few ways they lose their wealth. One is through taxes, poor estate planning. People die and they think they're going to live forever. And then, the government comes and takes all their money. This happens to a lot of famous people. Prince probably lost almost $100 million when he died. He spent his whole life fighting against racism, and then he ends up giving $100 million donation to white people. Lazy, unfocused kids with no financial skill. That's a big one. Sometimes we want our kids to live better than we live, so we think that loving them means giving them whatever they want. Also, a very poor succession plan. We talked about that. All right, so one of the things I want you to look out for is this term that we talk about in the Black Business School called economic immaturity. Now, what is economic immaturity? Well, economic immaturity, which is a term you're not going to find in any textbook, because this is something we put together in the Black Business School in our Black Financial Therapy department. Economic immaturity shows up like this. If I ask a 5-year-old, what do you do with money? What do you think a 5-year-old is going to say? Answer me in the chat. What do y'all think that a 5-year-old is going to say if I say, well, what do you do with money? What does money do for you? What would how would a 5-year-old answer that question? Yeah, they're going to say, I'm going to buy some candy. I can buy me some shoes. I'm going to go maybe get some, when they become teenagers, they're going to go get some lashes, or they're going to buy a Coach purse or whatever. That's what children say. Kids, they don't say stuff like, well, I'm going to put a percentage of my income in my 401k, and then I'm going to use the rest to pay the utility bill, and then I'm going to put some money aside toward the down payment on my house. They're not talking about that, right? They're talking about doing things that a child would do, like buy stuff, consumption. That's the first thing that they learn when it comes to money. So a few things they might do: spend it on candy, buy toys or shoes, etc. Now, the thing about economic immaturity is that it's supposed to translate, right? You're supposed to get older and realize that's not the best use of money. But what you tend to look, if you look around and you see what many Black celebrities do, which are the people that a lot of Black people pay attention to, they still have economic immaturity. When they get money, they're thinking about how they're going to spend it. This is deeply embedded into the culture. I think it's embedded in there deliberately, honestly, because the American economy does better when people are spending their money and wasting their money. The American economy needs people to waste their money. They need you to be a consumer. They need you to show up and consume. And nobody consumes more than Black people. Nobody does that. So effectively, if you look at this, and the reason I say it's embedded in the culture is because there was a song, I forgot who had the song. I can't remember. I don't know if it was a Future song or somebody else, but the chorus of the song was, I'm riding around and I'm getting it. I'm riding around and I'm getting it. I'm riding around and I'm getting it. It's mine. I spend it. It's mine. I spend it. And then if you look at the imagery, you watch the BET Awards, or you look at just the imagery in a lot of the music, you'll see lots of material stuff. Or you'll see, if you go to an Instagram page of a lot of the most famous Black celebrities, you'll see these status symbols of, Gucci this and Louis Vuitton that, and they'll wear Gucci from like a Gucci hat with a Gucci shirt and a Gucci belt and some Gucci shoes, and have a Rolls Royce in the back. And all these things are, is it 2 Chainz? Thank you. I didn't know if it was 2 Chainz. I literally don't care, but I remember hearing the song. And the thing is that this is very powerful, because this is creating culture. That's why when the BET Awards happened, they called it, the hashtag was culture's biggest night. This is culture's biggest night. Or every year they'll say, this is the culture. right? Because this is sort of, I don't know if I don't know if you would call it deliberately planned. I think it is, but music is powerful. Music has a very strong way of really digging into your subconscious mind and shaping your habits. So ultimately, the question you must ask yourself is, what is money and what can it be used for? And here's why you may not want to waste it. Money can be used as a capital base. Number one, that's the difference between rich people and poor people. The only difference between rich people and poor people is that rich people have a capital base, poor people don't. That rich people have a bunch of assets they can use that will get them out of a financial bind, that will help them pay their bills, that will help them deal with a crisis, or help them make an investment if an opportunity emerges. Poor people don't have a capital base, so they have to sell themselves into slavery in order to survive, right? You sell yourself. Who do you sell yourself to? Well, you sell yourself to a capitalist, someone who has the resources that you don't have, right? Maybe if you work for a university, well, universities have an endowment. That is their capital base. It's a big pile of money they have to do stuff like hire people. You go to a corporation. Well, the corporation has equity. They have an equity base. They have a capital they can use to make investments, right? So you end up attaching yourself to someone or something that has a capital base. And so effectively, you're under the control of the capitalist. The capitalist makes the decisions for you. Also, this money can provide for you in a tough situation. Money is used to control people. Money is used to control. Even I've seen rich men use money to control women. I've seen women that have a lot of money and using their money as a way to control or exact revenge. Anybody remember that song? Hey, ladies, if your man ever get buck wild, then go out and hit them up style. Remember that? Everybody remember that song? It's an old song. And it's basically a song about this lady who basically I guess she felt like she was the victim because her man was cheating on her. And she was saying that the way to attack him is go hit him in the wallet, right? Go take his money and just spend it all, throw it all away, go to the mall with it, right? So money, for a long time, we've always known that money, it can be used as a tool or a weapon or a shield, etc. Money can be used to manipulate and harm people. And so also money can be used for saving, investing, philanthropy, etc. All right, so a capital base, we talked about that earlier. It's a set of resources that you can use to get what you need. I'll go through this pretty quickly. But there's other types of capital besides money, right? So don't ever think that because you don't have money, you don't have capital. There's human capital, which might be education, your labor, et cetera. Financial capital, things like stocks, bonds, real estate. Social capital, your network, your reputation, your brand name, et cetera. And one of the arguments that I've always made to professional athletes and Black celebrities, and when they complain about racism from the NFL or whatever, is that you're sitting on, probably $1 trillion worth of capital. You just don't see it. If you are a celebrity that has, 10 million, 15 million Instagram followers, and you have a brand name that's known all throughout the world, and you have connections with people that have lots of money, you have a ton of capital at your disposal. So if you get together, say 10 or 15 people like that, they would actually have a stronger capital base, or a capital base that rivals the NFL or the NBA or anybody else. You would just have to know how to leverage that. So a lot of times we tend to, unfortunately, measure our capital based on how many financial assets we have, but most capital is not in the form of money. Okay, universities have things like endowments. The reason big white universities do better than Black ones is because they have, if you take an average school, like let's say USC. I remember years ago, Dr. Dre gave a bunch of money to USC, and there was a great scholar down, president of Xavier University, Dr. Walter Kimbrough. I think he's at Xavier now. I think he's still there. And he wrote a great article in the LA Times where he basically said, I don't understand why you gave USC all that money, because the amount of money that Dr. Dre gave USC that was kind of like the amount of money they would spend in about 2 weeks. They were running that university. It was literally money that was literally like a drop in the bucket for them. And he said, but if you gave that money to an HBCU, that would have been transformative. Like, we literally could have educated 200,000 or 300,000 Black people with that money. And I supported him on that. I wrote my own article about it. I wasn't as nice as Dr. Kimbrough was. He had to be diplomatic because he has to keep his job. And I told him, I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna fight dirty. I'm gonna really tell him about himself. And I did. And it went viral. The article went viral, and friends of Dre confirmed to me that he saw the article. He wasn't happy about it. But I didn't care. I think that we have to have those conversations, and so effectively, because here's the deal. Look, if you look at USC and you look at the size of their endowment, the endowment of USC, which is pretty much kind of run of the mill as far as white universities go. It's a nice school, but it's not Harvard, it's not Stanford, it's not Yale, but it's, it's right kind of in the middle as far as elite institutions go. Their endowment at USC is bigger. I want to say it's maybe 5 or 10 times bigger than the endowment of every HBCU in America combined. So if you take all the endowments of every single HBCU in America, multiply it by 10, I don't think you would get the endowment of just one white university. And this is when the reparations conversations come up, you have to talk about those things. Those disparities are glaring and unbelievable and extraordinary and obvious and just crazy. And so you're going to have to sort of have enough economic consciousness, all of us are, to really make those points so that people don't sort of fall into the laziness of assuming that white people have everything because they're supposed to just have everything. White people are not supposed to have everything. White people stole everything. They took a lot from us. If you go through downtown Chicago or downtown Seattle or downtown Denver or downtown Cincinnati, 10-15% of those buildings that downtown should belong to us. So I think that to really do justice at the level that it needs to be done, it's going to be hard. It's going to take something very radical. Are they really going to do it? I don't think they're actually going to do it in the whole reparations conversation, but still, I think that should be the standard. I think that should be brought up. So let's keep going. All right. So moving on. Now, here's the other thing about money. One thing about money is that money makes you a target. So one of the things I tell people all the time is that